Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Count down to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
Welcome to the Wellness Transcription Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Gurley. Are you guys ready to grow together in our understanding of all things health and wellness? If so, you found the right podcast for you. Each week, we will give you access to evidence-based nutrition and lifestyle content that you can use to help improve the long-term health and wellness goals for you and your entire family. You can find us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms, so please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the show so you don't miss out on any of our weekly episodes or special guest interviews. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Wellness Transcription Podcast. Today, I've got you guys another great guest who I look up to, who is a pioneer in the field of not only lifestyle medicine and pharmacy, but as an entrepreneur is really kind of on top of it and just really puts out good, solid information. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Dr. Richard Harris. He's not only a medical doctor and a pharmacist, but he also has his MBA and is really pursuing a lot of entrepreneurial aspects of the field of pharmacy and integrating personal medicine into that and making that a reality for a lot of patients. So Dr. Harris, I appreciate you being here, man. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on this show. It's always great to talk about something that we are both very passionate about, and that's helping people through lifestyle medicine. And you're like, well, what are two pharmacists talking about this kind of stuff? I think it's because we're pharmacists. We know how the medications work, and we know that for a lot of things, they're not giving you the biggest bang for your buck, not the best ROI, just taking a pill every day and hoping it fixes everything. So I think that's a conversation that more people need to hear.
I don't know about you, but I've gotten a lot of feedback, at least from, not necessarily our patients, but just people in general, whether it be on social media or whatever it is, where, they see pharmacists and they immediately think, oh, they just want you on, different pills and things like that. And with you and your practice, I know that's entirely not the case. I remember one of the first times me and you talked, you were like, look, I don't write prescriptions unless I absolutely have to. And you were one of the first physicians I ever met that really had lifestyle medicine and getting all that going at the forefront of their practice. So I think that's really interesting. So one of the first things I'd like to talk with you about for my listeners is just if someone came to you off the street and wanted to work with you, whether that be for weight loss or just getting started on a journey towards getting their lifestyle figured out if they don't know what to do. How do you generally approach that as a physician and a pharmacist at the same time? What's that look like for your clients?
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to ask them is, well, why is this important to you? And that lets me know kind of where they are in their journey. So if they tell me, well, I just want to lose 5 pounds. I'm like, well, why do you want to lose 5 pounds? Well, I just want to lose 5 pounds. I know the odds of them losing that 5 pounds is extremely low because that's not a real reason, right? Now, compare that to someone who says, well, I want to lose 15 pounds because I've always wanted to hike to the top of this mountain and I'm going to get a chance to do that in 6 months. Okay, how much more motivated is that person, person B going to be compared to person A? I know person B I can work with because they've got a goal, they've got a timeline, and it's something that they've always wanted to do. They're very passionate about it. So that's important because as we go along this journey, whatever journey we're on, there's going to be ups and downs. The journey's never going to be linear in anything that you do. So if your why is not strong, the moment you hit a roadblock or something goes the other way, or you don't hit an expectation that you didn't manage correctly, it's done. You're going to put that aside for 6 months, and then you're going to pick it up again, and you're going to keep yo-yoing and wondering why it's not working. So the first thing I always get to people is their why. And I tell them that if they didn't have a strong why, okay, come back to me when you figured out why this is important to you. Because I can't tell you why it's important to you. I can tell you why it's important to me. It's important to me because I want to help people live a life full of purpose and joy. But you need to know why you want to do this and why it's really important to me. And so that's the first thing that I would start with, is get concrete on your why. And then we accentuate that with SMART goals, right? And break that into, okay, well, here's what you want to do. How are we going to achieve that? And what time frame are we going to achieve that? What milestones are we going to use? And so if you notice, most of the stuff that I talk about with people on that first visit is not even health, like what people think is health related, right? It's more of, let me get to know this person, figure out what their goals are. And then once we know that, we can move downstream and craft a plan that's individualized and best for that person.
Yeah, I think that's the total correct way to do it, because, the interactions that I've had with physicians, as far as, just going to your primary care doctor, it's very quick. Hey, let's do some lab work. What are your measurements? Like all that kind of stuff. What are your concerns? And it's very brief. And you kind of feel as a patient a little bit like I'm just kind of like a number, I guess, patient 2 or 3 out of the day. And I know it's definitely refreshing for someone to come in and just basically feel like you're getting to know them and you're investing themselves, because that's what it is. I mean, you're not only doing your job and providing them with good information, but you're really investing yourself in the patient. And I think we can do that too, at least from where I work in my work setting, is I feel like I'm personally kind of getting to know my patients to the point where I not only know what they're going through, what their whys are, but I'm also then able to go, okay, I know what Dr. Harris's approach is with you. So like we're all on the same page. So that way I'm not given any other information that may be contrary to what you guys are talking about. So I had a similar kind of conversation with a family member a while back when I was still in pharmacy school and doing my master's. And she came to me and she goes, hey, what do you know about Repatha? I think was her question to me, was, what do you know about that? And I go, okay, this is what it does, but, if you don't mind me asking why. And she goes, well, my doctor says I need to go on this medication because my lab levels are all over the place. I looked at her and I go, okay. I go, when's your next visit with your doctor? And she goes, it's in my next follow-up's like 3 to 6. I think it was 6 months actually. And she was like, if my lab levels don't improve, I have to go on this medication, so to speak. So she was like, I don't care what I have to do, but I need to do something. So her why was pretty like, hey, I don't know what else to do, but I'll do whatever you say at this point. So it was real simple. Like I didn't know a whole lot of intricate stuff at the time. So it was very, okay, I know what you do for a living. I know what your schedule looks like. I want you to really just try to eat as healthy as you can, whatever that looks like, that you can stick with consistently for a period of time. And then just whatever exercise you could do. I think the only thing she would commit to was walking at the time. And then literally within 6 months, like all of her lab levels improved, and we didn't really have to do anything drastic. And she actually was able to get off some medications instead of going on really expensive new ones. So I think that's a great example, and one of the few that I've had where, getting to know the person and their schedule and being able to come up with a plan it really helps them just kind of take some of that pressure off them. And it helps them kind of reorient their focus around small goals. So with that being said, let's say that first visit went well, their why is where it needs to be, and you're like, okay, I'm willing to work with you. What does the second visit look like going forward, just hypothetically?
Yeah. So then we're going to dive into the big 5 of lifestyle medicine, right? And so I call them the 5 pillars of health, the big 5. These are the biggest bang for your buck. Everything else in health and wellness is secondary to the big 5. And that is mindset, nutrition, exercise, stress management, and sleep. Those are the big 5. And so I would used to start with, I would ask people, well, which of these 5 do you think you could start doing today? Where can we start implementing things? And I realized that was a mistake. And the reason I realized that was a mistake is because unless someone had the proper mindset, nothing else mattered. And so I would really drill hard onto the mindset aspect first. And that was things like the growth mindset. All right, well, what are you going to do when you don't hit your goal? What are you going to do if the scale goes up 3 pounds this week instead of down? What are you going to do if you pull your bicep and you got to stop working out? What are you going to do if you get 3 or 4 bad days of sleep in a row, right? Are you going to get derailed, or are you going to say, okay, well, that kind of sucked. Well, why did that happen? And you know what? The next 4 days, I'm going to do better. Right. And so I would really hammer into people the growth mindset. I give them resources. Mindset by Carol Dweck is a great book. Another one is Grit by Angela Duckworth. That's a great book. The Power of One More by Ed Milet. That's a great book. These are all fantastic books around mindset and overcoming challenges and even how you view the world. So in my mentorship group, I highly recommend everyone has a mentorship group or a group of peers that you can talk to about not just, what the Kardashians did, but like actual stuff that matters, right? And we don't call things losses. We say they're opportunities, because I believe you only, as the kids say, take an L when you didn't learn something from the experience. If you didn't grow from the experience, if you learned and if you grew, that was actually a win. Because now, just like anything, I know it as healthcare professionals, when you break a bone and it heals, that area that's broken actually grows back stronger, right? When you exercise and you cause micro tears in your muscles, those muscles get stronger. And you can apply the same thing to what you're going through in your life. It's resilience. And so that's the first thing that I would tell people about is mindset, because most people, again, think things are going to be linear and they're just going to start and things are going to be in a field of butterflies and everything's going to be magical. And that's not the case. You're going to have setbacks, and you need to prepare people for times of plenty and times of famine. And that is where the mindset is so essential. And then I would get into, well, what's the data show on mindset? Well, we know people who have a growth mindset are financially better. They tend to advance higher in their careers. They tend to be less prone to believing false information. They tend to be less prone to the effects of stereotypes. They tend to be more honest people. When they get depressed, because everybody gets depressed, right? That's just part of a normal human experiences. You're going to have times where you feel down and out. The people with the growth mindset, when they get depressed, they tend to work harder to maintain their routines. So when they're on the ropes, they fight harder to maintain what their life was like before they got on the ropes. And that's going to make you much more likely to get back to where you were before, because you're still maintaining the same habits and going through things like you would when things were good. And then you let's look at some data. Optimists live longer, right? Optimists live 11 to 15% longer, depending on the study that I've read. They have about a 36% reduction in cardiovascular disease compared to people who aren't optimists. And there's two things really involved with mindset that I look at. There's the placebo effect and the belief effect. We know as pharmacists that you can look at any single condition out. You could name 5 random medical conditions, and you could find a placebo-controlled study where the placebo showed improvement in that condition. Right? It universally across all conditions, you could find a placebo-controlled study where there's some improvement. And that just shows you the power of your mind. So people were taking something, they didn't know if it was placebo or not, but they thought that thing was going to help them. And then they saw improvement. That's the placebo effect. So you have to have the belief that what you're doing is going to work. And when you have that belief, when you hit those setbacks, you look at them as a temporary setback. You don't look at it as like you're a failure. You don't look at it like something's wrong with you, like you don't have the right tools, you don't have the right personality. You take it as, well, okay, that sucked. What am I going to do about it? Let me figure out, okay, who do I need to talk to? What skills do I need to acquire? What do I need to try differently? How do I make this work? You begin to ask yourself empowering questions instead of questions that are saying, well, I'll never be good at this. Well, when you say stuff like that, your brain reinforces that. But when you say, how do I make this work? Your brain begins to figure out how you make this work. I'll give this quick example. I was taking care of a patient. I diagnosed her with prediabetes, and she was like, oh, okay. I was like, whoa, prediabetes is a big deal. Even though you're not diabetic, you're still at increased risk for developing cancer and Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease, right? I use those three things because those are three things that generally people know, and nobody wants those things. And she said, really? And I said, yes. And here's a plan. So I gave her basic nutrition information, resources. And I was like, and you need to start exercising. She goes, well, I don't have time to exercise. And I said, okay, let's look at this from a different viewpoint. Why don't you ask yourself, how do I make time to exercise? And within 10 minutes, I kid you not, 10 minutes, she went from, I don't have time to exercise to a full exercise plan.
Wow.
That's the power of your brain and asking yourself empowering questions. So those are the key aspects I work on mindset. Again, the belief effect, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can do it, because when you have that belief effect, when you hit that opportunity, it's going to be a bump in the road, and you're going to keep moving no matter what that opportunity is, because you believe in yourself. I had this in 8th grade. I tried out for the basketball team. I didn't make it. And then in 9th grade, I said, okay, I have a year to get better, because I believed I could get better. I believe with hard work, I could get better. And I believed that I could make the team the next year. So for a year, I practiced, I worked really hard. I played all the time. I played against older kids. I came up with a plan. I'd shoot for 10 minutes, dribble for 10 minutes, play defense for 10 minutes. I was shuffling my feet on the driveway against air, right? People probably thought I looked crazy. But the next year, during tryouts, my friends were like, hey, Richard, you need to tone it down. You're making us all look bad. And I made the team, right? And so that's the belief effect. And it's so powerful. There was a study that was done where they looked at genes. They looked at people who had genes that predisposed them to be better performers when it comes to exercise, and people who didn't. And so they looked at this and they said, okay, what happens if we tell the people who have good genes that they have bad genes, and vice versa? And what happened is, when people were told that they had bad genes for exercise, their exercise performance dropped, even though they had good genes. And the people who had unfavorable genes were told they had good genes, and their exercise performance increased, right? Or you can look at, there's a study where they had kids that were told that they were gifted and talented, and they told all the professionals around them they were gifted and talented. So these kids went on to do amazing things. At the end of the day, you find out they weren't gifted and talented. Their scores didn't do any better than any other kids. They were average on their tests, but because they thought they were gifted and talented, and everyone around them thought they were gifted and talented, they performed to the level of kids who are gifted and talented. So that is, in a nutshell, the power of your mindset, and why, to me now, it's the most important of those big five, is start with mindset, start with your why.
Yeah, I can attest to this from personal experience too. That was a part that I never really thought, whenever I started, whenever you start learning all the science, and especially when pharmacy school started, and you're just getting hit with all this information, you have you start learning and feeling good about yourself. You get kind of that ego boost a little bit. But as time goes on, like, I learned from being a college athlete that, and dealing with injuries and setbacks and just stuff that really was out of my control, realizing that, okay, this happened, but I know it works. I'm going to stick with it. And I know that if I keep doing that, we'll come out on the other side just fine. And so setbacks in not only a sports aspect, but like with school and all the intricacies that come with that, I knew that if I struggled on a test, or if I really did bad on something or dropped the ball, that, learn from it. I can't make excuses for myself, because that doesn't fix anything. And then also, if I just make excuses and I don't learn, I'm going to repeat this behavior again. So I think for me, that was something that I really had to focus on a lot more, especially after practicing, like getting out and actually being a pharmacist and working. And, Joby can attest to it too. Like, I came into his office one day and he was like, "Hey, it's just like a performance review type situation." And he goes, "Hey, what do you need to work on?" And I just started listing all these things that I felt like I need to work on. He goes, "Okay, well, we're done here." He goes, "You got them all." And it was, I always have the ability to kind of be real critical of myself and know what I have to work on, but it's coming from a different perspective. Like I don't feel like less of a person because I know how to be tough on myself, I guess. But I don't know where I was going with that, but I think that mindset was kind of important. And again, when I learned how to be healthy or something like that, or all this negative information would come my way, it's like that mindset pieces. If you don't have to worry about that, it's really beneficial. I can attest to that too. That once I figured that out, a lot of the other things that came secondary to that were a lot easier to implement.
Yep. You'll see consistency when your mindset is correct. And I've seen that across the board. I mean, people think there's some magic bullet. The magic bullet is discipline. The magic bullet is just show up, right? That's the hardest part for a lot of times. I mean, I love exercising. I love the gym. I love working out. It doesn't mean I want to be there every single morning at 4:45 when my alarm goes off, right? There's sometimes where I don't want to go. I want to hit the snooze button. I never hit the snooze button. I'm always there just because it's discipline. It's my goals. And I feel better because I did it. Now, sometimes I might take it easy in there. Like if I got bad sleep or something happened, I'm not going to push myself all out, but I'm still going to show up and I'm going to do something regarding what my plan is. And then I'm going to take plan rest. I mean, we can talk about that later when we talk about exercise, but it's just show up. You may not have 100%. If you've got 50%, give 50%.
Yeah.
That's better than giving 0%.
Correct. That's one thing my wife hates that I do. Is for the longest time, I've really struggled with hitting the snooze button. I would do that, but I found out after I would, try and fail with hitting the snooze button, I found that it was just like simple. I wasn't going to bed when I should be going to bed, given the fact that I wanted to get up at 4:45 or 5. It's like, yeah, that's a great goal to have. But if I'm going to bed at midnight, getting up at 5 a.m. is not going to do me any good. And I really had to kind of reorient my approach to, try not to be on the screen and really doing things, doom scrolling on social media or whatever late at night, that was affecting me being able to fall asleep in time. So
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
it's little things like that, but that's the thing about discipline that I've always been drawn to, because when someone's got it figured out and you know that they have those same thoughts of going, I really don't have it today, I could just go back to sleep, it's fine, I'll start again tomorrow refresh. But it's like when you have someone in your group that's holding you accountable, it's like, no man, like we're here, we got to do this, like just show up. And it's like that accountability community aspect of that is crucial. So I think that's fantastic that you have that group and people that can hold you accountable, because that goes a long way. Because there's many days where I wake up and I'm just like, I don't want to do this, but it's like, no man, that's what we do now.
Yep. And I hold myself personally accountable. My wife needs that. She's a person who needs social proof. She needs the group to hold her accountable. I don't. I will fully hold myself accountable, and that's fine if you're one or the other. But know yourself and know what you need, right? If you need that group accountability, get in a group. if you're the person who is self-motivated, great. Well, keep showing up, right? That's all you focus on. And I'm glad you touched on sleep there, because to me, sleep is probably the thing that you could start doing, like getting more sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep on average, and you feel better the quickest, right? I mean, a couple nights of improving your sleep and you'll feel like a dramatically different person. A couple nights of bad sleep, I feel like a different person. But when I was in pharmacy school, I went from like a straight A student to making C's. And it was because I struggled with insomnia all my life. My mom has it. My sister has it. Probably there's some type of genetic circadian rhythm dysfunction in my family, right? And because I started having horrible insomnia when I was 10 years old. And so it's something I've dealt with all my life. In pharmacy school, it got really bad. I was only sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. I had horrible sleep anxiety. So even the thought of trying to go to sleep made me anxious. Wake up, look at the alarm clock. And I got on sleep medications. And then I felt terrible taking Ambien. I felt horrible. I felt like a zombie. Started looking in the data and realized, okay, the data shows this gets me minutes more of sleep. That's it. And then it decreases deep sleep. I was like, well, that's not a good thing. Neither one of these things seem like it's worth it. And then taking them chronically is associated with the increase in Alzheimer's. I have an ApoE4 carrier, right? So I have a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's. So once I dug into the research, I was like, well, this is terrible. This is not aligned with my long-term goals. What is? And I learned about sleep hygiene. And so I realized that I had a ton of terrible habits that were keeping me from sleeping. I studied in my room, right? I studied on my bed. So that was one of the first things I changed. I stopped studying in my room, started going to the library. I was spending all of my time indoors, wasn't getting any sun exposure. I was like, well, this is probably not good to be sitting indoors all the time. So I knew that sunlight's important for setting my circadian rhythm. So I started to get more controlled exposed sun time. Another thing that I was doing was the alarm clock. I had to get it out of the room. So I got it out of the room. It made it so I didn't roll over. I couldn't look at the clock. That helped tremendously. In fact, I was reading a paper about alarm clock induced sleep anxiety and how people can see dramatic improvements in their sleep quality and caliber just by getting rid of the alarm clock so they don't roll over and look at it. And you can use other things like your Google Home or, have it across the room so you can't just roll over and look at it. Or now I have an alarm clock that is an LED display that I turn off so I can't see the display. The alarm just goes off, right? And I hit a button and that's it. That was a big thing. Another big thing was bright light. And so usually we're shooting a podcast right now. It's in the evening. It's about 7 p.m. The sun's starting to come down. Usually what I do at this time is all the overhead lights go off and we use floor lamps, right? Because that bright light is just sending signals constantly to wake up. And then I'm really cautious about blue light in the room and blue, because you have these little lights everywhere when you sleep. And it doesn't take much light to suppress melatonin synthesis, which is kind of tragic. But if you think about it, our ancestors slept in the pitch black. So, that's what our bodies were used to is, at night, almost a complete absence of light except for the stars and the moon. And if it was cloud covered, then
forget about it.
You saw no light. Yeah. So, these are key principles of sleep hygiene. Another thing is not eating like within 2 to 3 hours of going to bed, especially not eating heavy. Most Americans eat their largest meal dinner, right? That's where they get most of their calories from, which is actually, if you're trying to get good sleep, the worst time to get most of your calories in because, it's the thermic effect of food, right? Your body temperature goes up as you're metabolizing food and your body temperature needs to drop when you sleep. Another thing, don't wear 15 million layers of clothing when you go to sleep because it's going to keep you warm. Don't have 17,000 blankets on your bed when you go to sleep. You need to cool your body down. Get that temperature, 68, 67 degrees, right? I sleep in just underwear. And that helps because now my body's not warming up when I sleep. And so these are the techniques of sleep hygiene. And if you want to know like why is sleep important, well, sleep is when your body recovers. Sleep is important for decreasing Alzheimer's disease, for decreasing injuries. Lack of sleep is associated with anxiety and depression, because when we sleep is when our brains decode memories from emotion, right? Because you can remember something and you can either have an emotion attached to it or not, right? And so our brain processes this while we sleep. It's probably why we dream, as we're doing that emotional processing. And then what else is lack of sleep associated with? Just about every bad thing you can think of: increase in cardiovascular disease, increase in cancer, increase in diabetes, increase in accidents. Car accidents are actually on the rise, which is
that is surprising
kind of
to
sad.
me. Given the fact that like
distracted drivers and
that's a big thing for me. Is the one thing that I've noticed if I get a couple days in a row of really bad sleep is no matter what I eat, no matter how healthy it is, well balanced, I bloat like nobody's business. That's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is like, okay, I could literally just eat, a banana or like something, even not a lot of volume, and I'm just like struggling. That's a big thing for me. Also, especially as males, like hormones, like you can just tell something's off. Like trying to get up early, go to the gym, and it's like, okay, I've only slept 5 hours, but okay, I'm here. And then you try to push heavy and it's just not going to happen. But then that next day you get that 8 to 9 hours of sleep in the gym, and it's just like, man, this is easy. Like, I don't feel like I'm actually doing anything, and I'm pushing heavy weight around. That's one thing that I need to focus on, because my big thing is I use my phone as my alarm clock. So it's really easy for me to just roll over and turn it off. I do pretty good with sleeping in a cool room with not a lot of light. Like my wife likes to watch TV in the bed, in the bedroom. And I just, if there's any type of light in that room, I can't fall asleep. She can like a light. So it's easy.
There's a pretty interesting study about that, about women using TVs, how they're more likely to be obese when they fall asleep with the TVs on. And they thought it was probably due to circadian rhythm disruption. And we know that depending on the study, like I've seen people between 200 and 500 more calories the next day after sleep deprivation, right? So I think the average is somewhere around 250, 300. But we tend to eat more the next day when we're sleep deprived. And then you're also more insulin resistant. So then you're not processing, especially if you're eating a high carbohydrate meal, you're not processing those carbohydrates as well the next day. So, sleep is so important, and it's really simple to do these things to improve your sleep. And like you said, the phone, I typically recommend people turn off their phone, turn off the TV at least 30 minutes before bedtime, right? Read a book, do some meditation, say some prayers, whatever, do that. I tend to keep my cell phone out of reach at all times when I'm at home. Like it's usually on the counter and I leave it there, and that's it. Digital wellness is a pretty interesting subject. There's a lot of interesting studies that have come out recently that show that you can improve mental health just by taking, breaks from social media. The more you use your phone, the less happy you are with your life overall. Like that's a whole nother topic for another day.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. Is I would always, I've noticed with cell phone usage and things like that, for me, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was young, like maybe like 3rd, 4th grade. And, back then there were no phones, like it wasn't a thing. So like it really wasn't an issue. And then it was, I think maybe college or pharmacy school where you had that phone near me, and I was just I would find myself doom scrolling and not even realizing what I was doing. And then I have an app on my phone, I think it's called Opal, and it tracks like how many times I picked up my phone, how long I've been on it. And it allows me to then take, restrictions on certain apps. Like once I hit a time limit, it will shut off, and it's set to where it won't let me even turn off the turning off of the app until the next day. It's something like that. So I've had to go a little bit drastic as far as helping with that. And it's been a little bit of a struggle, but I've noticed when I'm in the bed scrolling on my phone, it's not been good. I tried to reorient like my Bible study time. I'm pretty into a lot of that right now. I have a community group with the church that I'm at that we all do very intricate studies and stuff like that. So reading and doing that prep work at night has helped a lot. I do notice even on my Whoop, when I track my sleep the next day, that I get much more REM sleep. Whereas I could sleep for 8 hours, but the REM is like minimal and I can definitely feel it. So I think it's fantastic that you're breaking all this stuff down, because I'm sitting here making a checklist like, yeah, do that. need to work on that. And I think that's going to be beneficial, because sleep is, like I said, you got to do it every night. So why not, start there, and then focus on the other stuff later. And then, so the next one's like, if let's say we get their sleep figured out, we get, the mindsets there. Do you typically focus on exercise next? That's where I tend to go, before we get into the nutrition stuff. But what's your approach there after we get the sleep and the mindset taken care of?
Yeah, I tend to want to go to nutrition next, because I think that you won't maximize your exercise without sleep and
It's true.
nutrition, right? And so I'm talking about like strength training and, heavy aerobic stuff. If you want to just go to walking, that's
Mhm.
perfectly fine, right? If you want to go get your 8,000 steps a day, cut your risk of all-cause mortality by about 50%, right? Just walking, lowers your risk of developing diabetes, lowers your risk of developing cognitive diseases, dementia, all cancer, all that kind of stuff, right? So I usually start with nutrition, and I know you're the nutrition expert, so I'm not going to go too
I
in
wouldn't say
depth
that
about it. I
much.
tend to tell people,
I wouldn't go that far. I would say, I got that extra training, but there's been so much that I've learned in practice, just getting in the weeds and meeting with people, that I've learned a lot more since I've been out. But I think for me, I've had to reorient my approach to nutrition, and I think you'll appreciate this too, because you've said it on your own podcast. Oh, by the way, listeners, Dr. Harris has a fantastic podcast called the Strive for Great Health podcast. So please go give him a follow and listen to his episodes. I think they're great. The ones where I think the episodes where you cue down on things you've changed your opinion on. I was the same way when I got in and started doing my nutrition program. I was very functional medicine oriented. I was a very low carb kind of guy. Like that was just kind of what I thought made sense. And then the evidence showed me the opposite. So it's been tricky to kind of sift through and really ground myself in quality studies and what makes a quality study that I'm looking for in terms of nutrition. And it's made it blatantly clear to me that I think the research part is the piece that a lot of people have difficulty mastering, because they'll go, oh, well, there was a study that said this. It's like, well, what did this study say? Like, what were the endpoints? What was the study design like? There's so much stuff that goes into figuring out if a study's quality or not that I think the average person just struggles with. And then on social media, you see people throwing out a study, assuming they reference one anyway. They'll just say something and be like, oh, okay, that sounds right. I mean, this guy knows what he's talking about, maybe. So, I mean, he just said this study showed this, so sure. And that's been a tricky part to kind of undo some of those things that I had kind of learned, because I think I was biased towards a low carb approach, because that was the original approach to weight loss that me and my mom had back when I was in high school. We both were pretty overweight, and that was just what we did. We didn't know any better, and it worked. So, that bias creeps in, be like, oh, that worked, and it felt okay on it. So that's how it must be. And in reality, that doesn't work for everybody. And that becomes blatantly clear when you work with patients.
right?
I think for me, consistency is the most important thing. Like, what type of dietary approach can you do consistently over long periods of time? That's what we're going to stick with. And I can work with you on trying to figure out how to best adapt that approach. But just saying, hey, everybody's got to go keto, that's the only way to go, may not necessarily work for somebody, especially with all the other factors that come into play. So
Yeah. And I think what makes nutrition tough is that nutrition is the most heterogeneous of the big five on how it affects people. And what do I mean by that is you can have vastly different individual results with nutrition. So we know that exercise, largely people who exercise are going to get the same effect, right? People who increase their sleep and get 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, they're probably going to have pretty much the same effect. People who meditate and have stress, they're probably going to get pretty much the same effect, right? Nutrition, you could have two people get vastly different effects by doing the same intervention. And that's what makes nutrition tough, and why there's so much nuance, and why you really have to be a detective when it comes to nutrition. Now, me personally, I just feel better when I do low carb. Like it just, I perform better. I have less bloat. I have less cognitive issues, you know, and that just took time for me to figure out. That when I was eating your typical, you know, bodybuilder, high carb type plan, I was tired all the time. I had brain fog. I had to take a nap every day. And it wasn't that I was eating primarily whole foods. You know, I wasn't snacking on a bunch of, you know, ultra processed foods, but I was still eating a lot of carbs. And I switched that to, I started incorporating more protein, more fat, and then going, you know, moderate carb, I'd say. I get about 30%, 30% of my intake from carbs, which is not low, but it's still lower than most people who are as physically active as I am are, right? Most people who are physically active, like I'm, probably around 50% of their intake from carbs.
I'm the same way. Man, I never really tracked it back in the day, but I would say now, based off of, you know, my goals and everything, I maybe eat about 150. I think 150 a day if I'm really pushing it on the strength training side. I feel like for me, that works well to where I'm not super fatigued or having to like take extra days for recovery. I've noticed for me too, making sure my protein is high has probably been the most important thing as far as satiation for me, because my problem was, you know, and I think this is pretty well established in patients with ADHD and things like that, is they tend to be more at risk for binge eating disorders type situations. So I found that if I wanted to stop myself from eating way too much, having higher amounts of protein consistently and having consistent meal times was what helped me the most with not snacking on things that are hyper palatable and things that I could just eat for a while and then go, oh man, I just ate that entire bag of something. And I'm sitting there going, I don't feel any more full. And I know I just have the damage that I just did. So protein, I think, was of the macronutrients that I've found, especially for active strength training individuals, that's where I try to keep that consistent. Like, hey, this is your calorie goal for what your goals are, but here's your protein goal of all the macros, like hit this one for sure. And then, you know, the other ones we can tinker with, but it's not going to be perfect. I couldn't imagine trying to do 50% carbs, because on the calorie goal that I currently have and all that, like that's a lot still. Then it would be a struggle for me.
Yep. Same. Because, you know, I don't like a whole lot of carbs. Like I like fruit, right? But you can't eat a ton of fruit, right? You'll feel full pretty quickly, right? And same thing with, I don't like a lot of grains. I like farro, I like potatoes, but you know, I try to have my plate like it's about half meat, mostly lean meats, right? 25% either grain or fruits, and then 25% vegetables, right? So that's typically how I structure my plate. You know, I tell people with nutrition, the biggest things to focus on, number one, protein. Get adequate protein. You know, I tend to go a little bit higher on the range, like 0.8 grams per pound, right? Is where I kind of like people to hit, because that way if they go over, that's fine. You know, if they go under that, a little bit under that, that's fine, right? You definitely don't want to get less.
Are you going point?
Right. And so if I tell people,
are you going 0.8 off of lean body mass, or are you going off of like total body weight? If you're making the
total body, it's just hard. Most people don't know their lean body mass, right? If you do, you can fine tune this a little bit more, but you know, I try to keep things simple for people. So for most people, I just go total body weight. And then prioritize your protein. Next, get your fiber, right? So whenever I grab a meal, I'm thinking about protein first, fiber second. And so how much fiber? I personally shoot for about 50 grams of fiber per day. But, you know, for you're about the same, yeah. For a guy, like the minimum is about 38 for a guy, about 24 for a girl, right? More is probably better than less. So, you know, if you're in that 40 to 50 range, you're getting tons of fiber. that's the second thing. The third thing is
Yep.
80-20 rule, right? So get 80% of your calories, at least from
Right.
whole foods. 20% can be from whatever
Mhm.
you want, right? But 80% from whole foods. There's a study out of Brazil that showed that your risk of Alzheimer's increases once you get more than 20% of your calories from ultra-processed foods. We know observational data for every 10% in ultra-processed foods you eat, there's a 14% increased risk of mortality, right? So 80-20 is perfectly fine. You know, we're not telling you never
Sure.
eat a donut, never eat pizza, whatever. Just have a plan. Like, I know if I go out to eat, there's going to be more calories in that food than I cook. And so I'll either
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Ah, feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
eat half of what comes, or I'll eat half of my lunch.
Okay.
So I'm adjusting, right? I look at having a calorie budget like a fiscal budget. So I know if I go buy something really expensive over here, I can't go buy something
here.
really expensive over here, right? I balance my budget in the middle. So if I buy something expensive over here, okay, I gotta go cut down on something, over there. So I do the same thing with calories. So have a calorie budget and then make it flexible and adjust, but don't just categorically exclude anything. That's number 4. And then the 5th thing is water. Most people do not drink enough water. I believe it's 50% of Americans don't drink enough water, according to the CDC. And how much water, that can be highly variable. But I tell people a good starting point is half to 2/3 of your body weight in fluid ounces. And then I'll use your urine as a guide. Like, if your urine is light yellow, you're perfectly hydrated. Most of the people I see coming and giving urine samples, that stuff is like dark, muddy brown. I'm like, you drink much water? No, I don't drink much water. Yeah, I can tell. You think your urine's supposed to look like this? No, it's not.
That was one of the most important talks. I did a lot of my master's thesis work with my baseball program that I worked with in college. We had no nutritional support whatsoever. It was a small school, just wasn't the budget for that. So I wanted to work with them and get them kind of just basic education stuff down. And I asked them the first time I talked to them, I go, guys, what is the most important thing as far as being a baseball player? Like, what am I going to talk to you about nutrition first right now? Like, I know there's a lot of things we're going to cover, but what do you think it's going to be? Almost every one of the guys were talking about protein and like supplements and stuff. And I go, no, guys, water. I go, you guys are going to be practicing, especially with how hot it is right now, especially in the early summer or the late summer, people are going back to school. I go, if you guys are waiting to feel thirsty to hydrate, we're got a problem, especially at practice. Like, if you're thirsty going into a 2-hour-long baseball practice, it's not good. So I really focused on hydration for those guys for a while. And then the exact thing you just said is using your urine as a guide of, if it's super clear, you're probably overhydrating to a degree. But you want to keep that pale yellow is the sweet spot. And if it's any darker than that, then just keep sipping on water. You don't have to chug it all at once, but just make sure you're consistently hydrating. And then the guys with practice, they ended up, like, I even worked out a plan with the coaches to get them strategically having, like, every set period of time, like, these guys have to have a water break and this is how much I want them to consume. And it made it super easy. And then they never had any issues with people having like heat type issues or really getting underhydrated. So I know for me too, that's another thing with my wife that was tricky, was just getting her to drink more water, because she would go throughout the day and then I would ask her, hey, how was your water intake today? She's like, I don't really think I had much at all. And I was like, okay, well, let's focus on, you know, coming up with a number. And now she's really consistent and really good with hitting that water goal. So that's extremely important too. If you're waiting to sweat a whole lot to determine if you're gonna be drinking water, it's a little too late at that point.
Yep. Yeah. By the time you feel thirsty, you're already at a 2 to 3% drop in total body water, right? Which is significant. It's significant enough that you're showing a decreased cardiac output at that point, and your reaction time is impaired to the same degree as being legally intoxicated.
Yep.
So dehydration is not a small matter, especially now, like looking at, I still keep a track on what's going on in the hospital trends. This time of year, we typically get a lot of people admitted for dehydration. That number's gone through the roof because of how hot it is. And I believe you start sweating, it's something like 78 or 80 degrees is when you start actually sweating. So it's not it's much lower than what people think it is. So you've got to replace, what we call insensible water losses from sweat, especially given how hot it is outside now.
I mean, it's been brutal over here. I mean, I think it's average 104 for like the past month and a half, and it's just no rain. So, you still see people out cycling and running and stuff, but it's like you guys, I see out near work, people cycling all the time in the middle of the day at the hottest point, and you look on their bikes and there's no water. Like, oh, that's not good. Hopefully they have a plan, but yeah, the hydration is something that not a lot of people I think are focusing on. But like you said, being in a hospital and being a clinician, like I know hospital order sets and all that for IV fluids. It's important, important to focus on for sure. So now that we got kind of the basic nutrition stuff down, then do you move into exercise at that point, or okay? What
Yeah, exercise. And I break exercise into 3 categories, right? There's strength training, there's aerobics, and then there's movement, right? And you have to do all 3. It's not like you can just strength train and be like, oh, I'm perfectly healthy. Okay. When was the last time you did any cardio? I don't do cardio. You got to do both, right? And, we've seen that both are better for muscle development. We've seen that, of course, cardio is great for your heart and your brain, right? And then movement time, it's a little bit different, but that's kind of like your just baseline, keep blood flowing through your body, right? Keep lymph draining, right? That's the way I like to describe it to people, is that, half of your circulation, it's not really half, but I used it because people know arteries and veins, right? I go, half of your circulation, the venous system, only drains when you move, right? It needs muscle contraction to move blood efficiently back to your heart. And so, I tell people 8,000 steps a day is the goal, 4,000 is the floor, right? You probably get more benefit like incrementally, like up to 12,000 steps a day. But that's hard to do for most people. 8,000 is readily doable. 4,000 can be done by just about anybody.
Pretty much, yes.
Right. That doesn't take much effort at all to get 4,000 steps. When you're below 4,000, that's when your risk of all the bad stuff increases. When you're above 4,000, that's when it decreases. And I think 8,000 is my target. Yep. That's my goal. I don't kill myself if I don't get it, but on average, that's what I shoot.
I think 8,000 is definitely more doable. I mean, I think 10 is the most common thing that I see, like on social media, or if you ask people how many steps they should get, some will say 10. I heard one person say 20 one time, and I'm like, do you just walk all day? Like, do you have one of those walking treadmills where you do your work on? And it was just funny, but yeah, 8,000 is I feel easily achievable. I've found for me, like with steps and stuff, I found that I actually tend to digest food and meals better if I walk afterwards for a good, like, especially if I maybe go out to eat like that night and eat something I maybe shouldn't have. 20 to 30 minute walk after that helps significantly. And I don't feel like I'm holding on to as much water that next morning, as well as.
Yeah, same.
It's interesting how tried and true a lot of these are.
I'll go even after dinner. Yeah, and it's across, because just movement is essential to human life. We were if you look at evolutionary, why humans survived, it's because we were adept at movement. We were adept at going long distances to track and kill prey and then bring them back, right? So our bodies are designed to move. And so, yeah, I try to do the same. If I eat, especially if I eat a heavier meal or larger portion than I normally eat, I got to walk. I got to move afterwards, get that blood flowing. So it's not all just like pooling around my stomach, right? I just feel better. And then, when you look at aerobics versus strength training, I tend to lean more on strength training. I tend to tell people do 2/3, 1/3. So let's say you're going to work out 3 days a week, right? First, most important thing about working out is how many days realistically can you work out and for how much time? And then once you figure that out, you design a plan around it. So I tell people minimum 75 minutes a week to get the benefits, right? If you're just trying to be healthy, 75 minutes a week. You get more benefits if you get more. I think like I've seen up to like 300 hours, people still keep accruing more benefits compared to 75, but 75 is what you need for me to consider yourself healthy. So if you're going to do 75 and you're going to do, let's say you're going to work out 3 times a week. Okay, I'd say, cool. Let's do 2 days of strength training, 1 day of cardio. And that cardio could either be steady state, low or medium intensity or high intensity interval training. I hate cardio, so I do high intensity interval training because I can do 15 minutes and I'm out, right? And so that's the way I like to do it. My wife likes steady state cardio. No wrong way there. However you get it in is how you get it in. That's the most important thing. And then for the strength training, so that 3 day, let's say you're working out, you're going to work out 3 days. Well, we got 1 day of cardio. And then I'd say, okay, let's do 2 days of strength training. According to the government, 2 days of strength training is what you need when you're getting that 75 minutes of intense exercise or 150 minutes of moderate exercise. So if someone came to me and said, oh, I'm only going to work out 2 days a week, I'm like, okay, then let's do a full body, right? Do full body maybe Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, something like that. Slot your cardio day somewhere in the middle or whatever, right? Or you could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? Monday weights, Wednesday cardio, Friday weights. And let's say you're going to work out 4 times in a week. I'd say, okay, cool. Let's do 2 and 2. 2 days cardio, 2 days weights. 5 days a week. I'd say, okay, cool. We're going to do 3 days weights, 2 days cardio, 6 times a week, 4 days weights, 2 days cardio. That's what I do. I work out 6 times a week. I do 4 days of weights and 2 days of cardio. And with my weights, now that I've gotten older, since I'm not lifting as heavy, I'll jump rope in between sets, right? Just as kind of a way to get more movement in, get my heart rate up a little bit, because my goal right now is not get as strong as I possibly can. My goal is just be healthy, maintain I want to maintain around 14% body fat because I can maintain that pretty easily without like having to track calories and things like that all the time. So that's my goals. I always tell people it's non-negotiable to be healthy. You have to do strength training. You have to maintain your muscle mass. Once you hit 30, you can lose up to 8% of your muscle mass every decade. Wow. And when you get old and you have low muscle mass, now you're at risk for falls. You're at risk for all the bad stuff, cardiovascular disease, cancer, early mortality. I believe the strongest risk factors for what we call all-cause mortality, but like I like displaying people to it. I like displaying it as premature death, right? During a study period, what's your risk of dying versus not if you have a condition, right? And I believe the highest increases in all-cause mortality are if you're weak versus if you're strong, and if you have poor aerobic fitness. It's higher than high blood pressure, it's higher than cardiovascular disease, it's higher than diabetes, it's higher than chronic kidney disease. It is literally your performance status as you get older is the most important aspect of your health and longevity. And so I tell people, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can get benefit even if you start at 60. The earlier you start, the better, but just start.
Yeah, I that's a huge thing for me is I that you mentioned like kind of not liking cardio. I don't either. we did so much of it playing baseball. Like, I was a pitcher, so we would, you'd have your bullpen sessions and you'd throw in the game. And the next day I dreaded it because it was a recovery run and it was always like really long, 2 to 3, sometimes 5 miles where we would just run. And I was just like, I hate running. I got good at it. It wasn't hard, but it was monotonous and really annoying for me. So in pharmacy school, I didn't have to do that anymore. I stopped, and then I would just go to the gym. And then I'm like, you know what? It's like, I can go in the gym and lift pretty hard for an hour and a half, but any type of cardio, I was struggling. And I was like, that bothers me that I'm struggling on simple tasks. So I had to kind of modify my workout. So I started doing, like burpee, like something like some sort of cardio in between sets helped a lot. And then, we do have a Peloton here, which, believe it or not, I thought it was going to be kind of monotonous, but that one's pretty interesting too. But I think, especially for the female clients that I have and that I work with, it's like trying to get them in the gym is probably pretty tricky for the most part. From what I've seen, it's just that stigma of, oh, if I lift weights, I'm going to get bulky is still there, even though it's just really not the case at all. But that's the biggest thing. Like, I was reading Peter Attia's book. I'm still trudging through that, but the amount of things that he wants his elderly patients to be able to do is still surprising to me. It's like, I don't want to have to worry about if I can sit up and stand, or, go from laying to standing relatively easy without having to worry about falling, and then focusing on just packing on as much muscle mass on the frame as I can. So where when I get older, if something happens, that I'm not having to rely on assistance. And, with all of our long-term care patients that we manage at the pharmacy, it's really tough to see those patients. And the ones that have more muscle mass, it's pretty obvious that they get around and have a lot of an easier time. So it's pretty undeniable at this point that strength training is extremely important. But I like that approach that you have with structuring your weeks. So like, I try to work out 5 to 6 times a week, and for the longest time, scheduling cardio was tricky because I would try to do 2 a days and like go a little too hard all at once, and then I would just get worn out. So I like that, splitting everything up. That's a really good approach. I think I'm going to start working a schedule in like that to help with my own cardio regimen too. One thing I really wanted to pick your brain on too, and I think that's where we're heading in with the last one, of stress management. I think for me, I never thought I had a problem with stress and anxiety and things like that, but it's pretty apparent when you're out in the real world and you got to remember all these things and multitask, that I didn't really have a good stress management regimen. So how do you approach stress management? For me, it was always, I would worry about the next day, like when I'm trying to go to sleep, and I'd be like, I got all this stuff to do, and then these things. So I'd start creating scenarios in your brain of stuff that could happen, and then the next day, none of it would happen. And it was like, I spent all that time worrying for nothing. And I really struggled for a while of trying to figure out like apps and certain things to use to kind of tailor that kind of thought process. So any tips you have for me, I'll definitely take them. I know guided breathing's helped a lot too, but any other ones, man, I'm open to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think the stress, there's 2 components I break stress into. There's stress resilience. Like, how do I make myself physically and mentally more resistant to stress? And then there's stress management. When I feel stressed, what do I do to relieve that stress, right? Number one thing most people turn to is alcohol, which is the worst thing to turn to in this situation, right? Because then it makes it so that when you're stressed and you don't have alcohol, you feel more stressed, right? Because your body gets that and uses that as a central nervous system depressant. And so it alters the way you respond to stress. It also just wrecks sleep and, the bad cognitive outcomes, increased risk of cancer. I mean, I'm not saying don't drink. I'm just saying be aware that having, 1 or 2 glasses of alcohol a night is not going to be good for your health. Under no circumstances is it beneficial for your health. Now, let's go to the stress resilience. How do I make myself more resilient to stress, right? So when you encounter a stressor, instead of going to 100, you go to 20, right? The number one thing is mindset. because it's your perception. What do you think about the event, or what do you think is happening in the moment? Right? Because like, our grandparents used to say, most people make mountains over molehills. So if you perceive it as a mountain, your stress level is going to go way up. If you perceive it as a molehill, your stress level is going to be a whole lot less. So I think that's the most important frame is wrapping your head around the mindset thing, the perception of the event. Number 2 is being realistic with what you can do. Don't overload yourself, but also don't be afraid to push things to tomorrow. Like, they used to happen to me. I'd be so afraid that something bad's going to happen if I don't get the task done right now. And then nothing bad ever happened. And then I started getting more comfortable pushing those tasks off. And now it's like, okay, I prioritize. I have a task list, and that's the critical tasks get put on the task list. Everything else that's not critical, it doesn't go on the task list. It doesn't go in my calendar. And so it gets done when it gets done. When all the critical stuff is done, it's in my calendar, it's scheduled. The non-critical stuff I use to fill in the gaps, right? And it's being, realistic on what's critical and what's not. Now, the other things that can help with stress resilience are all the things that we talked about today. Exercise is profoundly important for not only reducing stress, but also making you more resilient to stress. Doing hard things. If you seek out a comfortable life, you will be miserable. If you seek out things to make yourself uncomfortable, you will have an easy life. Your life won't be easy, but because you're so used to making yourself uncomfortable, you know how to handle life when life tries to make you uncomfortable, right? So I say doing the hard things, and then some of the secondary things for health, things like sauna work, cold exposure, fasting, all of these hormetic stressors, they put stress on your body to make your body respond in a certain way, and that can make you more resilient to stress. So, I'm a big fan of periodic heat exposure, periodic fasting, periodic cold exposure, just as a hormetic stressor to help me be more stress resilient, right? And then there's stress management. So what do I do if I feel acutely stressed? These are things like gratitude. Instead of focusing on the problem, focus on the things that are going right. Because you could have one bad thing happen to you and 99 good things happen to you in a day, and you focus on the one bad thing. Well, the gratitude practice reorients you. And then it also helps with the negativity bias. Humans have a negativity bias. We remember negative information much more strongly than positive information. You have to be aware of this and counteract that with gratitude. Another thing is meditation, mindfulness. Mindfulness is just making you aware, bringing you back to the moment. Instead of focusing on the future or things you can't control, it's just let me be present and here in the moment. And that actually can make you more stress resilient. It can also help you lower stress acutely. And then I'll try to combine that with breathing exercises. There's tons of different ones out there. There's Wim Hof, there's 4-7-8, there's physiological sighing, there's alternate nostril breathing.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now only at BJ's.
I found that the best one is the one that you feel the best with. Like Wim Hof increases I feel anxious when I do Wim Hof, but like 4-7-8 breathing with breath holds, I feel super calm. So you may need to try different breathing techniques and find the one that works best for you. Because like you've mentioned, and I've mentioned several times on this podcast, the best thing is a thing that you can consistently do. So, I see people arguing about, oh, this breath technique for this breath technique. Try it, see how you feel, see which one you can be consistent with. So what I try to do is I'll do 3 seconds through my nose, 1, 2, 3. And then at the end of the 3rd second, I take a quick breath in through my nose. And then I hold it for 4 seconds. And then I breathe out for 7 or 8 seconds. And then I hold it for 7 or 8 seconds. And I just keep doing that over and over again. Now, I found like through trial and error and trying multiple different breathing techniques that this is the technique that relaxes me and feels the best to me, right? It may not feel the best for you. So you may want to try something else, but breathing, the way we breathe actually does help regulate our nervous system. It's been shown to increase HRV, to lower blood pressure, lower heart rate. And so these are all metrics that are correlated with stress and the central nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So that's typically how I deal with stress is mindset. Let's make ourselves more stress resilient. And then let's have a plan, and if then when plan. If we feel stressed, when this happens, then I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. One app that I do have on my phone that I would use, I haven't used it as much frequently because I've gotten a lot better at managing, not doing too much at once and really following up on certain tasks as far as workflow goes. But there's a guided meditation or guided breathing app called Breathwork that I liked. And it you just click it on your phone and it syncs it to where it tells you how long to hold and all that stuff. That's been helpful. And there's different settings. Like if you're having a really acute issue, you can switch it to an acute type shorter session or longer ones, things like that. But stress management for me has been a big thing, and working out helped me consistently. I had a buddy, we were talking on a podcast a few episodes ago, and he made an important point. He goes, I've never gone to the gym mad and left still mad. I've always felt better, even if it's a day where I didn't want to be there and I just had a really bad attitude with it. I've never left there not feeling somewhat better than I did going in. So I think that's an important distinction. Yeah. And then I know we're around an hour, a little over an hour now, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time and everything tonight. I'm greatly appreciative that you were here and able to help me out with all this stuff and make it so clear and simple. I think that's one thing I've appreciated about your approach to it all is I've never once thought, oh, that's tough to do. A lot of people try to easily make it harder than it should be, especially when it comes to supplements. So I know we wanted to kind of briefly touch on supplements. I take a very minimalist approach to supplements, and I know you kind of share that as well, because it can get really expensive really quickly, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So after you've addressed all of those types of issues and we've gotten all of our bases covered as far as the 5 pillars of lifestyle medicine goes, when you reach for supplements, what are some of the basic ones that you just have most people reach for? I have a good multivitamin. I take a lot of creatine. I have a good fish oil supplement. And then I actually have another one that I've mentioned to you previously in private conversations that I think will be really interesting to you. I'll talk to you about it off camera later on, whenever we get some time. That's really cool. It has to do with sesame extract and things like that I'm working with. And then some, caffeine, I guess you could require that as a supplement, even though there's dangerous territory there that you can get into. But what are some of the other ones that you reach for, that I think everybody should take at least on a daily?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple that give you the most bang for your buck. And that is, number one, just a high quality multivitamin. I take the one from Pure Encapsulations. I love it. It has iodine in it. So if you have, iodine allergy, you might want to search for something else. But in general, good multi. And here's why. Number one, nutrient deficiencies are not uncommon. You look at the NANES data, I believe it's 45% of people don't intake enough vitamin C. Vitamin A was somewhere around there. Zinc was 15%. We know B vitamin intake and B vitamin deficiencies are not uncommon as well. So just these basic fundamental vitamins and minerals that you can get in a good multi. And the one we take costs like $17 a month. Like that's so cheap. And so there's also two recent studies came out where they showed that taking a multivitamin slowed cognitive aging. I believe it was on the order of like 2 or 3 years difference in cognitive age between the multi-group and the non-multi group. Also, if you're on any medication, you probably should be on a multi, because there's so many medications, and we know this, that deplete minerals and vitamins. So, ACE inhibitors deplete zinc, metformin depletes B vitamins. All the anti-seizure medications can deplete B vitamins and folate. So, and the list goes on and on. So that's something I think is a high value target that has been proven, good quality multivitamin is safe. The next thing is creatine, right? Creatine, some people think creatine's a steroid.
I've heard that a couple of times,
but it's not.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah, people are like, well, I don't want to take steroids. I'm like, dude, creatine is not a steroid. So what creatine is, for people who don't know, is it's basically an energy source for the body. Your body will take in creatine, put it in the muscles in the form of phosphocreatine. So when you're in high demand states, when you need a lot of energy, your body will use that as an energy source. That's basically what it is. It also helps pull water into your muscles, which is a good thing because your muscles are mostly made of water. So creatine does help with hypertrophy. It does help with strength. Maybe not as much as we thought, but you still do see gains there. And one of the really cool things is cognitive benefit. So creatine also has some antioxidant properties as well. And so people are seeing, when you take creatine, you do see a cognitive improvement. So also creatine monohydrate, 5 grams a day. It's safe. It's dirt cheap, right? So those are another one that I think is a high value target. Number 3 is whey protein. If you're not getting enough protein, which most Americans don't, we covered that. Whey is a cheap, effective source for a high quality protein. And so there's also some evidence that whey is immunomodulatory, right? And so there may be some other benefits to whey protein as well, outside of just the high quality protein source. So that's typically one that I think a lot of people can benefit from. The next one is vitamin D. If the vitamin D isn't in your multi. If vitamin D is in your multi, like it's in the one we take, it's 2,000 international units, which is, a good dose. Most people could benefit from 1,000 or 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Vitamin D deficiencies are very common, 42% of the U.S. It's up to like 64% in Hispanics. I think it's like 82% or something like that in African Americans are vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D is a hormone. It's involved with protein metabolism, glucose. It's involved with our immune system. It's involved with brain health. So vitamin D is involved with over 200 different genes in the body. It regulates 200 different genes. So that is a high quality thing that you could take that's cheap. It's effective at raising vitamin D levels. And it's something you can monitor easily. Just get your vitamin D checked. So that's the thing. And then fish oil would be the 5th one. Most people are not consuming enough omega-3s, right? And the number one source in human diet for omega-3s is oily fish, right? I personally hate oily fish. I don't like sardines or mackerel, or I don't even really like salmon that much. I'll eat it sometimes, but I'm not cooking it at home. And for me as an ApoE4 carrier, there's some evidence to support that higher levels of omega-3s are necessary for brain protection. So I take 2 grams of fish oil a day. I also use a ground flaxseed powder in my Greek yogurt. That has about 1 gram of omega-3s, but it's in the ALA version, which is not as well converted in, especially men. I think women convert ALA to EPA and DHA better than men convert ALA to EPA and DHA. So fish oil, again, that if you don't eat oily fish, that might be something you want to look into for just overall health, brain health, lipid health, cardiovascular health. And then the sixth one, plus or minus for me, is probiotics. And I say plus or minus because there are people who legitimately will benefit from probiotics, like people with irritable bowel or Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis may benefit from probiotics. People with depression and anxiety, randomized controlled trials have shown improvement in mental health in people who take probiotics. People who frequently have to go on antibiotics, right? There are people who may benefit from a probiotic. I don't think everyone needs to take a probiotic, right? And then you have to really work with somebody because if you're taking a probiotic for a certain indication, you need to make sure it has the right strains that have been studied for that indication. So that's why it's kind of plus minus on the probiotic. Caffeine, I generally don't talk to people about because I think most Americans are consuming, between 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine a day. I just tell them not to drink or intake caffeine after about 3 p.m. because it's going to negatively affect
for someone like me,
right?
Yeah.
And if you're feeling
someone like I have a CYP1A2 issue. So with mine is I just don't break down caffeine well. So if I have any form of a higher dose of caffeine after around 2 or 3, I'm up. And it's like I could even be ready to sleep and tired, and I just can't. It's one of those things for me that's really really important. So there's genetic stuff at play there. There's also people that have the opposite where they metabolize it super quick, so they end up drinking a lot of coffee a day. But it's an important distinction.
I'm one of those. I'm a rapid metabolizer.
I'm slow. I wish
so
I was
I could in med school I could drink a Red Bull. Yeah. I mean it's like there's no solution to the trade-offs, right? So I used to hate it because I could drink like a Red Bull and I felt nothing like an hour and a half later, right? So in med school I had to drink a ton of caffeine just to keep like the effect while I was studying. While my wife is like you, she's a slow metabolizer. She has like 100 milligrams in the morning and she's good to go all day. She also has ADD. I wonder if there's a link there. That'd be interesting to.
I feel like there definitely is because in my experience and what I've seen with other people is what else do I have going on? So CYP1A2 downregulation. I have a CompT issue, so I can't methylate too well. And then I've found in clinical practice talking to people that have ADHD or who are coming off of ADHD medication because they just don't like the way they feel on it. The first thing I'll see is they'll start caffeinating a lot more than normal to kind of feel that normalcy effect. And I've had a few interactions with patients in the pharmacy where this exact scenario happens where like I'm slamming coffee just to feel normal. And in that situation, I tend to reach for something called theocrine, which is an analog similar to caffeine, but you don't have as much of the cardiovascular effects. So people get that kind of focus improvement a little bit without feeling like they're jittery or their heart's racing. So that's another one. But yeah, I have definitely for me, I have to be careful because if I don't take medications or when I didn't take, stimulant medications at lower doses to help out with that, I would over caffeinate and then I couldn't break it down. So then sleep got affected. And then I got made fun of a lot in pharmacy school because I didn't take any medications in pharmacy school for that. So I would caffeinate a lot and I would go to the bathroom all the time because it was just that caffeine was just hitting me. And they're like, Pat, dude, you've gone to the bathroom so much. They're like, do you have diabetes? And I'm like, no, I've had way too much caffeine this morning. I know better, but it's funny. I still kind of do that a little bit. But there's definitely a link there. I feel, that may or may not be teased out yet. I haven't really dove into the literature on that in a while. I think you've made this distinction already that was really important, and then we'll wrap things up. But I made a database. I'll share this with you. I made like a searchable spreadsheet for nutrient depletion. So I went through the top 200 medications and tried to find as much information on depletion as I could find. And it's fascinating how many just traditional routine medications deplete a wide variety of vitamins and minerals. I think the one that scares me the most is birth control. If you look at the data on birth control and nutrient depletion, it is terrifying because it just depletes just about everything that you would not necessarily think. I mean, that's not a counseling point I was taught in pharmacy school for that. I use it now routinely because I know it, but And that awareness for nutrient depletion from a drug perspective is really starting to get teased out to where people are aware of it. I think PPIs is the thing that kind of caught everyone's attention, because PPIs are pretty bad too, as far as that goes. But that's an important distinction. I think that's really all I reach for if I have anything. Like I used to take way too many supplements all the time, and I was like, man, I'm spending way too much money on this. When in reality, like if you know anything about pharmacokinetics and dissolution profiles for those different, fancy supplements, is a lot of them just don't get absorbed well. So whether you realize it or not, you may not actually be absorbing any of the things that you're trying to take. So, which I think is an important thing that pharmacists bring to the table. Knowing those things has really helped me tailor patients reaching for certain supplements. So, one example I can think of off the top of my head was berberine. Berberine has very similar effects to metformin as far as mechanisms and how it goes with insulin sensitivity and things like that. But berberine has a from a medicinal chemistry perspective, has a quaternary amine that's permanently charged in its chemical structure. So I think it ends up being I think it's like 3 to 5% of it's actually bioavailable in that form. And an easy solution to that would be going for a preparation called dihydroberberine, where they modify the chemical structure to where that charge is gone. And you get, I think, 15 to 20% absorption at that point. Same dose and everything. So you get a little bit better improvement. And that's teased out in the clinical literature too, when you look at berberine versus dihydroberberine versus placebo, as far as blood sugar control and A1C reduction. So that's just a primary example of just a simple tidbit of knowledge on how stuff gets absorbed can make a big difference. And it saves you some money too, because I would hate to find out that I've been taking a supplement for 6 months that I spent a good bit of money on that's just not working. So, well, Dr. Harris, I appreciate you, man. I can't say that enough. You've been one of the guys that I've looked up to quite a bit since I got to know you through Joby and everything. Before we go, I want to give you a chance to kind of plug what you've got going on. I know we've kind of hinted at, haven't really gotten into Nimbus or anything like that, but feel free to kind of let anyone know how they can reach you, where they can follow your content, and then just how to stay connected with you if they're interested in working with you or working with, the pharmacy side of everything in general.
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Instagram at drharrismd. What I do now a lot is work with Nimbus Healthcare. So we are in the personalized medicine space. We have an offering in hair restoration, hormone replacement, and weight management. So nimbushealthcare.com is our website. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. I got a project coming soon where I'm starting a Discord server, a community where we'll be talking about lifestyle medicine and health. I'm really looking forward to that. But I thank you for having me on the show and just getting to talk about, the basics of lifestyle medicine. I hope that it gives some people some information. And yeah, like you said earlier, like this stuff it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of thought. I calculated one time, I spent 13% of my waking time on health promoting activities. That's it.
Yeah,
and that includes
that's crazy.
13% of my waking time.
Yeah, that's nothing.
That's nothing. Right? And that's not total day. That's just that's awake time, 13%. So you definitely get time, money, ROI by investing in your health.
That's a huge thing. And like I said, I think it's great that you just were able to eloquently just spell out super easy, simple ways, because I don't know about you, but if you're on social media for any great period of time, everyone makes it seem like it's way harder than it needs to be. But the real practitioners and the people that I seek out advice from and that I kind of modify my practice on is people that harp on consistency and doing the simple things, because you can do all the crazy stuff till you're burnt in the face or till you're blown in the face. And you're just gonna get burnt out. And I've done the same thing. I used to focus on the things. I used to go down rabbit holes and then get so worked up over, I tried all these crazy things and I didn't get any better. Like my lab levels got worse. And just again, going back to the basics. And I think to like what you said earlier, when you're at a tough time, being able to reorient to yourself to go, okay, I need to go back to what worked for me, and then mindset. I think that's the most important thing that I was expecting you to talk about it, but I didn't realize that was going to be the first pillar, was the whole mindset part, which I think is fantastic. So, I can attest, guys, to the Nimbus hair restoration stuff. I started losing my hair a lot in pharmacy school, and Dr. Harris got me all figured out there, and I've grown back. It's made a huge difference for my hair. My dad's hair has grown back considerably. So it works. And that personalized aspect is just so cool that, you feel invested in as a patient, and that we got their best interest at heart. I think that's great. So I applaud you and Joby for doing that, because y'all are kicking ass and taking names as far as I'm concerned in this space. So I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Glad we were able to help you guys
Dr.
out.
Harris, I appreciate it, man. I'll talk to you soon. We'll have you back on at some point, because I'm sure this is going to do a lot of yeoman's work for the people that listen to the show. And I, again, appreciate you for all your advice and guidance to me on a personal level. And I wish you nothing but the best, and I appreciate you. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Wellness Transcription Podcast. If you wanted to continue to support the show, please do us a huge favor and follow, and leave us a 5-star review on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Your support and feedback mean the world to us, and it also helps us to continue to bring you guys high quality content moving forward. You can follow us on Instagram at the Wellness Transcription Podcast. That way you can stay up to date on all of our upcoming content and special guest interviews. As always, be well and God bless.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Count down to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now only at BJ's.